Welcome back, everybody, to another Saturday night live stream. And today we have some good news. We have an update on Polymega shipping for those like me who have been waiting for years and years and years. We have a litany of new retro video game toys announced at CES and during the week. And we're going to talk about some crazy Arcade1up news that came out this week. And maybe we'll take a look at the Polymega Ultra Element module. All that and more. So let's get into it. Hey, welcome back, everybody. And I want to thank you all for joining us. It is a bitter cold day here in Kansas City. And if you're happen to have Peacock where you're at and watching the Chiefs Dolphins game, you get a small glimpse of what we're going through out here with our negative temperatures and wind chills. But we're staying warm and talking Arcade1up and retro games. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. It looks like we got Gotham City Arcade in the house. Countercade stopped by a little earlier, and Zach's Rides. And so it says, what did they do? The anticipation is killing me. At least I got Time Crisis before it got too weird. Looks like Game Plus is also in the house saying, hello, everybody. So we will get into the Arcade1up news, but first, let's talk Polymega. And before I jump into that, I did get my Ultra Module shipment. These were the ones that we talked about a week or so ago. And Darren Kane is in the house. And so we talked about those. Those are in stock at Polymega. If you happen to be one of the lucky few with a Polymega, you can actually order those now and they ship same day or the next day. And so I had gotten confirmation that my pre-order from nearly 3 years ago was supposed to ship. I got that confirmation on November 20th. As of today, sitting here, it still has not shipped. I know a few people got their base units finally a couple weeks ago, so kudos to them. And just as a reminder, let's bring that up real quick. So just as a reminder, right? A couple weeks ago, Polymega announced some official shipping news finally. As you can see here, they said anybody that had a pre-order for a deluxe bundle before October 2021 is supposed to get theirs by the third week of January. If you pre-ordered Element modules, you should also get yours that third week of January. Hey, Thumper Squid, thanks for joining us. So, aside from that, there'd been no news. So I've been trying to keep tabs of what's going on, and it does look like we have some good news. And as you can see here, last Saturday, Polymega, or Play Magi in this case, got another huge shipment hit the ports. So it looks like they're going to be able to meet their delivery of Polymegas, which is, like I said, for me, it's a big deal. I've been waiting on this dumb thing for, better part of 3 years, I think, at this point. I do have the deluxe bundle order, so I should have all their stuff. So I'm happy they're finally coming. I don't know if any of you have experienced it. It looks pretty cool. Hey, what's up, Jason? Thanks for stopping by. But I'm excited that it's finally here. And, I don't know really what else to say about that. It's something that really kind of refreshed my love of retro games and got me back into building up my collection again after years. Was the idea that there was going to be this modern retro console that you could back up all your cartridges and a lot of the discs on and have a legit collection on this one system. since then, I've bought and purchased, and bought's not a word, purchased analog products and a whole bunch of others. And really, the Polymega is kind of like, feels antiquated. It's just a emulation console, but it's still kind of cool that you can, back everything up on it and play those rather than your, keep using your original discs. So Games Plus asks here, is Polymega the all-in-one console? So that's a great question. It's a single console that has a disk drive in it, but it's modular, so you can snap pieces off and put new pieces on. So that's kind of a good segue. Let's jump over, and I have a quick unboxing video that I did of the Ultra Module, so you can take a look at that. And so here, here's the box it comes in. It comes shrink wrapped. It's actually kind of a nice box. It's got good graphics on the side, so it'll display nicely on a shelf, like vertically, because each one of these modules not only comes with the module itself, which takes the original cartridges, but it also comes with a controller for that system. Each of the modules can take original controllers plugged into them. So you'll, depending on what you're playing, you may want to pull the module out, even though you're not going to put carts in it in order to play with those other controllers. But most of the time, you're probably just going to have these modules on, packed away, because once you back up your games on it, you don't really need the module anymore. You can just play it off the hard drive, or you can extend the Polymega with an M.2 drive to add a lot of extra disk space. And so you can see there's not much to what comes in this box. It is basically just the module and the controller itself. And first look, I noticed this controller seems, you can see it's got the original N64 hookup. That's what the Ultra Module is for the N64. It's small. This controller is abnormally small compared to a real N64 controller. It's also super cheapy feeling. It's very light. It just feels like junk, quite honestly. Probably a $10 controller that they've thrown in here. So I doubt I'll be using this. I have several legit not GameCube, but N64 controllers that'll work better, or you can use any of the generic controllers like Xbox and stuff with this thing too. And it does kind of, like Games Plus here, it does kind of give that feel with the way it's set up. It's certainly not anything like the N64 controller, which has that odd pistol grip and odd placement of the analog stick. And like I said, this thing is small, so I want to compare it real quick to the an original controller. And Zach writes, yes, you need the module to use the original controllers. You do, but it does. The main Polymega base unit comes with a more modern controller that can work with all of these systems and is wireless, so you don't technically need to use those other ones. But if you want to use original controllers and that, you do need to have the modules plugged in. And so you can see, like, look at the size difference here. It's at least 50% bigger compared to the Polymega one. It's just the buttons are real close together. It's not a very comfortable controller. It seems like it's made more for little kids. And a little kid isn't going to be playing the system. They get kind of a good glimpse at how much more tiny that is. But enough of that. It does say that it does look like it has the Rumble Pack connector and everything else, so you should be able to take advantage of Rumble in the games. As I mentioned, I don't have my base unit or the rest of the modules yet, so I can't even test this thing. I know when it first came out, it was bricking people's units because it didn't even have the driver wasn't out yet. And then when they did release the driver itself was borked, and then they had to pull it back and then re-release it again later that day. The version that came out that didn't work just wouldn't work. The system wouldn't work with 4K TVs. So it took them a little bit, but they fixed it. But the people that had plugged their module in before that driver came out, some of them have to send them back. And since Polymega doesn't actually have any, they can't get replacements or anything. So there's a lot of frustration out there right now. And yeah, Zach, it is a really cool idea. That's what, when I heard about it, I thought I had to get one. It's really versatile. And one of the things Atari did, I've mentioned this on the channel before, Atari made a major investment in Polymega, which is why they're finally able to ship these to people. So there's going to be an Atari module coming out, sometime in the future. Polymega is also going to release an app, so you can actually just do this on your computer. You don't need the actual hardware. The app will let you use a CD drive on your computer to rip the games and then load them up into the Polymega app. And that Polymega app will not only be available on PC, it's going to be available on the Atari VCS if you have one of those. And I believe they made mention of various modules that you can get today that you can plug in to read your carts on your PC, and you'll be able to use that to extract carts to the app as well. In addition, they're going to sell games through the app if you don't own them. Some of these modules do come with some games that they've licensed. The Ultra module does not, but I believe all the others have at least 1 or 2 games on them. So that's the hey, what's up, Gotham City Arcade? So that's really it on the Polymega news. So I thought next I just talk a little bit about, you guys probably seen all this stuff from CES 100 times, so I'll just flip through it real quick, simply because I don't really, quite honestly, I could care less about my arcade. I think this stuff, their stuff is, it is what it is, for $50, $70, retro games. They're fine. It's just not my cup of tea. But so as we get into that, one of the interesting things, Atari announced this just a day or two ago, the Atari 400 Mini. So I personally don't have any experience with the Atari 400, so it's probably not something I am going to be picking up. But it is interesting for those who are mini collectors or actually had one of these. Growing up, we had an Atari 800, which was like a, computer. You could program BASIC on it and stuff like that, but there wasn't a whole lot of, typical Atari games like you'd think of. But this is a bunch of 8-bit games, so it does have things like Berserk and Centipede, so it's better graphics than a typical 2600. Full keyboard, obviously. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, so I thought I'd share that if you weren't aware of that system. Another big announcement was the Hyperkin, I don't even remember what they called this stupid thing. It's basically their version of the Nomad, so you can play, much like the Superboy, you can plug in Genesis cartridges and actually play them on this. So it's got a decent screen. Normally, I might be a little more excited about this. I do like the Genesis. I really like my analog Mega SG, and I got all the adapters for the analog pocket because it just looks so good and plays well. And so this would be something I'm interested in. But let's face it, Hyperkin has announced at least 4 or 5 things at CES that has never come out. So I have zero hope that this is actually ever going to see the light of day. They had, you know, in the past, they've talked about a Game Boy that they were going to release. God, what was some of they've had a few. They just never come out. Really, you know, Retron, since the Retron days, which they're all now long in the tooth, they've been out a while. The Retron 5 and 3 and 77 and all that stuff. Their Superboy is pretty old. You know, they just haven't released a whole lot of stuff. So I hope it comes out. I doubt it will. But there's that. So next up, I am sure it does look like that Zach's. You know, this is interesting because my arcade, I guess, is going to get into the countercade game. Again, it's Atari. And it just might. Or it might take like 2 C batteries or something crazy. No, I think it has a rechargeable battery, but it would be hilarious if it actually had batteries like the Game Gear. Yeah, and so, yeah, these countercades, this is the Super, the Mega, or this is the Mega. They also have the Super, which is a 7-inch. This is a 10.5-inch screen. I mean, this looks decent, right? This is probably one of the better things my arcade has released, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the countercades, so I will say G.I. Joel's addition to the stand for the Arcade1up Countercades actually is pretty cool. It makes them look like mini real arcades, which is actually makes them more appealing in my opinion. But I've never been a big fan of them. I know a lot of people like them. They're just not my cup of tea, so I wasn't too, you know, didn't really care that they were releasing this or when they made this announcement, but it is pretty neat. But one of the things I wanted to really show about it, and we'll talk about that a little more after we look at the Atari, how do they call this thing? The Game Station Pro Remix, right? So this is, they moved some buttons around, they released an extra controller, but this is the exact same system that they announced at last CES. Here's what that looked like. A lot of people picked this up, you know, in the last couple months when it was released. So a lot of people like it, you know, and it's fine. And so for them to come out to CES and say, well, here's a new one, we've got some new controllers, that's okay. I mean, it seems pretty quick after the other one. But one of the things I wanted to point out here is that, you know, these remixes, if you notice, they all have this kind of same design, this white and then the stripes. And so Atari's rebranding a lot of the stuff that they have previously released. And so it got me thinking, and again, this is just ideating. Hey, what's up, P-Dubs? And Doug Dog, no, we haven't got to it. I mean, we'll talk about it. It's not necessarily anything new. It's been stuff other people have talked about it, but I want to jump in and talk about it a little bit. So again, when we're talking about these new additions, I was thinking, well, you know, we're all struggling to figure out what cabs Arcade1up is going to release, if any, this year. You know, I've opined, I know like Biggie D and others have opined that maybe they're not going to actually release a bunch of new versions of deluxes. Maybe the ones that have been out there haven't been out there all that long in the market. With the announcement from Kokum that they've been able to reduce their back stock down considerably. You know, maybe they'll just continue to move the designs from 2023 and 2024. But what if, right? What if we actually do get a new Atari Deluxe this year? But instead of it being what we're all hoping it is, like a Missile Command or an Asteroids or something with the correct form factor, what if it's the Atari 50th remix and we just get the same thing with this new remix colors? and maybe they put a few extra games on it. Maybe they add some 5200 games into the mix. I mean, I hate to say it, but it seems like that's what Atari's doing so far this year. Especially with My Arcade. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If they did that, I'd be highly disappointed. I have the Atari 50th. It's the only Arcade1up cab I've ever bought that I regretted buying after I had it. I was pretty excited for it, but it was not my cup of tea. Yeah, Jason, I hope that never comes out. Yeah, well, it is just a theory. I'm just spitballing. I hope they release one that is an actual like replica and not that, but boy, it makes me wonder seeing what the My Arcade and others did. So that's really all that news. I don't know. Did you guys see anything at CES you're particularly excited about? I'm not really. Everybody and their brothers talking about Jaws and that Stern pinball. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not huge into pinball. I like my virtual pinballs. And speaking of, right, I guess we got some good news today from Wagner's Tech Talk. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go watch his video. He got #1 off the line of the new Addams Family 4K pinball. It looks like it's playing good. He says it's playing good in his clips. I'm pretty impressed with it. I'm waiting for mine, so I'm pretty happy. I'm disappointed that I won't win the Who Gets #1 lottery, but maybe I'll get number 13. Who knows? But I'll be interested. I'm pretty excited after seeing his that it's running good. Looks good with all the new additions and changes they made. So I'm super happy that should be coming. Disappointed that they only shipped his by, they rushed it by air to get it here and was just manufactured on the 27th. So we may not see them for, I think it takes 5 weeks to get across the ocean. Hopefully they got them onto a ship before the Chinese New Year starts and nothing ships, but because that'll be a nice big delay. But hopefully it gets here and it's on the water already. Otherwise we'll be waiting towards the end of February and not 3 or 4 days like that game's promised. P-Dub says here, Atari seems to have a real hard-on for this 50th anniversary art and color scheme. They made both Arcade1up and My Arcade use it. They really, really do. And apparently their 50th anniversary, from what I was reading, they're just going to keep on doing it for a long time because they figure they're counting all these different games. So even though their real 50th anniversary was a few years ago, they just consider it still valid because now they have another game that's 50 years old and another one and another one. So I don't know how long they can keep that up. But they definitely are beating that like a dead horse. And yeah, I want 13. I'm sure some people want 7, but I think it would be awesome to have 13. So let's see here. Sorry, let me stop that. And so a lot of people are asking, so what is this crazy news, right? So if you haven't seen it already, I know Michael B mentioned earlier this week, and I just lost there we go. Michael B mentioned earlier this week that Kokum, who's the exclusive distributor to Arcade1up, and I have a video talking about what I think this really means, but that, like I said, they managed to decrease $57 million worth of inventory in their warehouses down to $17 million. That's on top of additional $20 million in purchases from Arcade1up. So really they moved close to, $60 million in inventory throughout the year, which is pretty, for Arcade1up, I think that's great because it shows people still want these. It probably just means they want them at a big discount. Nice. I wish my 40th would have lasted 3 years. You know, I keep telling everybody I'm 20, so we're all good. It says it's like Zach's Ride says it's like a woman as she ages but still says 29. That's exactly right. And Thumper Squid, someday a retro Atari collectible. And those numbers mean nothing to me. Maybe they owe 60 million. Yeah, I mean, they really don't mean anything. What they mean is they tell us a couple things with the numbers. One, it tells us that Arcade1up probably has about 20 million in revenue for this year. I'm sure there's an additional amount from apps and stuff they're selling on their Infinity game board. But for the most part, if Kokum moved 20 million in inventory of physical product, that probably surmised the vast majority of their revenue for the year. So it gives us some glimpse into what Arcade1up is doing, and that's pretty good. I'm betting there's a significant growth there because the numbers I could find at a few of the financial tools that I use, the highest I saw for their annual revenue was 5.6 million. So jumping to 20 million is a pretty good increase. Now, it may have been, I don't know how old that 5.6 million is. That's just one of the only public figures that you could find at some of these places. But 20 million is decent considering the size of the company, considering the layoffs they had last year. But so let's get to the other news, right? So we had a few things happen this week that were pretty interesting. First, John D popped up into Kongs R Us live stream. I don't know if you guys caught that last Sunday, but he gave us a little glimpse at what may be coming. He mentioned, now I don't know if it was a joke or not, but I'm guessing it wasn't, but he mentioned that he would be able to talk about what happened in April. So my guess is that he was put on, and Scott is probably in the same situation, a 6-month NDA as part of a severance package. We'll talk about where I get that 6 months from, but I believe that once the 6 months is over, so once he gets through March, he will be free to discuss what was going on. So he did drop on B's stream that he may come back around in April and give us a little idea what's going on. So that should be interesting. The other big news, if you missed it, was on actually Console Fanboy kind of pointed this out, and it was pretty interesting. And that was the rounds of promotions that were going on over at Arcade1up. And so let's take a look. Well, that's not, that puts, let's go back over here. All right, so we got a couple of big announcements for the folks over our big promotions. These went live, I think, this week. You have, obviously, Cyrus. Everybody loves Cyrus, right? This kid is super eager. He has been promoted to Senior Vice President of Licensing and Business Development. You probably recognize that title. That was John D's title. And then you have Saeed, and I will mispronounce his last name, but Hawk maybe. He's been promoted to Senior Marketing Director from Digital Marketing. And so I'm not, I know Console Fanboy was pretty critical. I'm not going to go there. I want to congratulate Cyrus. In fact, I did congratulate him already on his promotion. I think that's cool for him. He is young, right? And so, let's see here. I lost my... so as you look at his... it says here he's been with Arcade1up. This is from his LinkedIn profile, right? So he's been with Arcade1up for, 4 years, 8 months. started as an intern. And so he was an intern and then worked in licensing. And I think the interesting thing is some of the highlights of what he's worked on over the past year or two, really 2 years. And it's these collaborations seems to be what Cyrus was really focused on. He's the guy that brought us the Kith Cab. He's the guy that brought us the 7-Eleven Pac-Man. It says he's worked on some deals with Modelo Don Julio, some of these other, AnBev companies or brands. It's interesting. I don't know what those would be. Those somehow eluded me. I did not see any marketing or branding around those from him or from Arcade1up, but I guess they've been doing something. And then, so I guess that was enough to get him from intern to senior vice president in 4 years. So, kudos to him. I think, like I said, I super happy for him. That's great. I can say what, I'm trying to be nice because I think he's a genuine guy. I think he enjoys video games. Though we all know, we have to admit, he comes off disingenuous when he's doing interviews, and that's because he's so guarded and sticks to the corporate speak. And that comes from immaturity, not knowing that, not yet feeling like he can speak from a position of authority. I mean, I don't know if Arcade1up just inflates titles, but senior VP, that's pretty high up the chain. You got to think that puts him above some of their C-suite folks. I mean, typically a C-suite ranks in the VP area. Now they could be, just like I said, inflating titles, and in which case they wouldn't, but it just seems strange. Maybe Arcade1up's management thinks they just have to fill the position because that's John D's title. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And honestly, it may hurt Cyrus in the long run. I mean, he could have moved into an associate vice president and then into a vice president and then to a senior, several years down the line. That seems like a normal progression path for one's career. But to go straight into a senior vice president with so little experience, real world experience, he's either killing it, or like I said, and he may be right. We don't know what we've seen over the last year. I don't think you can blame Cyrus for any of those. I'm sure he's been part of those developments, but that's when John D was around. So John D was the head of all that, and Cyrus was learning and mentoring under him. And so we haven't really seen what Cyrus has done over the last year. And so maybe we're going to get some really exciting things that he worked on. And so if that happens, man, I mean, congratulations to him. But if I were him, I'd be concerned with such a high title. If something does happen to Arcade1up, and I'm not in the camp that I think they're going to go out of business. If the rumors of their financial situation are true, and again, they are just rumors, we haven't actually seen any proof that that's the case, that they could get bought out. These guys could all be looking for new jobs as say Atari takes over, or they could just get an investment to save them. I don't think they're going anywhere, despite all the doom and gloom. Their products are clearly popular. They just need to be able to get into that price point where consumers will get them, where it's not just a big annual sale at the end of the year. But for Cyrus's sake, he now has a very high title. And so if he were to find himself needing to pivot and look for a new job, boy, people are going to look at that and say, you were the senior vice president of licensing? Well, you're overqualified for all these jobs that you're looking for. I just, it seems like a lot for somebody so young to have such a huge title. But again, congratulations to him. I think that's awesome. Hopefully they're paying him well and it's not just a title. Um, this is Saeed's background. I just wanted to show that as an example. This is a guy that's, he's been with Arcade1up a couple years, but he's been working in the marketing field, doing this role that he's doing for Arcade1up for over a decade. So I just showed that, hey, congratulations to him. He also got a promotion here at the start of the year. But you'll notice he goes from a director to a senior director, a normal progression. And so here's a guy with a decade of experience. Why didn't he just get suddenly senior vice president of marketing or something? So just interesting. One of the things I noticed, that about Cyrus, right, is a lot of these folks that work for Arcade1up are in New York, and they all go to different New York schools. But I thought it was interesting that Cyrus went to NYU, and also who went to NYU is the current interim co-CEO. So I just thought that was interesting. And then I wanted to point out Talia here. Talia has been with Arcade1up for 2 years, but as you can see here in her work history, she's been in licensing and managing licensing for, well over a decade. So it's interesting that she's a director of licensing with a decade of experience, but Cyrus is the senior VP of licensing, and he has the equivalent of about 3 years worth of experience. So just an interesting juxtaposition. Obviously, we don't know the inner workings. And again, Cyrus may be killing it, and I'm excited to see. I'm assuming he is killing it over the last year in licensing, and will we see it? Because certainly acting isn't his foray. If you get a chance, jump over to their Instagram and take a look at some of these shorts that they're releasing. Whether it's Cyrus trying to buy board games and then finding an infinity game table, or riding a train using the infinity game table. I mean, hey, he's getting higher production value out of his infinity game table content than than he is on his arcade or his Arcade1up sales videos where he just points a camera at his wall. But hey, honestly, it makes me wonder if that isn't Arcade1up's core product these days, if that infinity game table isn't selling a lot more and generating a lot more revenue because of the digital content sales. I did note that Kokim listed that first in their press release earlier this week about the growth they've seen in Arcade1up sales, and say they'll continue to see. And maybe that's it. Maybe the Arcade1up is pivoting and becoming really focused on the infinity game table, which would really suck for us. But for the people that love that, congratulations. I think it's a bit expensive myself, but I know people really like it. Yeah, Big Dog. That's my sentiment exactly. That's I don't even understand it. Like I've looked at some of the games they have on there, and like I said, I'm sure they're fun, but like Uno, you're gonna play Uno on a flat table. You have to bring pieces of plastic to guard your cards. Like some of them just don't make sense. Other ones make total sense, right? You're gonna play Sorry with the kids. That makes sense on there. But like Battleship, like how do you do that when you can see each other in the whole screen? Like some of it just doesn't make a lot of sense in that format, but is what it is. So that I thought was interesting. And so I just share that because, it at least shows that Arcade1up is investing in their existing employees. So even though they did lay off a lot of people, I think I saw in here, right? MJ said what happened to Liv and Justin, so, they did some layoffs, they did some restructuring in what it looks like was the tail end of Q3 last year. And so let's kind of look at that real quick. one of the interesting things, while other employees were putting on their profiles their promotions, both Scott and John updated theirs for the first time. I've been kind of watching these, waiting for some kind of news that they no longer work there, that to be officially posted to their LinkedIn, and hopefully see somebody else. And you'll notice both of these say they worked there up through September. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because I believe the rumors of them leaving were well before that, but maybe time flies and I'm just dreaming it. I know John was at Evo, right? I think that was the last time we saw John D. And so I think that was that July or August? So, I know the rumors were swirling immediately, like within a week or two after Evo. So, but it is interesting. So they both officially announced September 2023 is their last time. And so combine that with John D saying he will be back in August or April, able to talk about what happened. That's 6 months, right? So that seems to make sense. If he has a 6-month non-disclosure in order to get a severance package, he sits quiet. He avoids the community until then. Obviously, he may have had a 3-month that was stricter. Same with Scott, which is why neither one of them had updated their LinkedIn profiles until January, and why we didn't see John D at all anywhere until B's stream the first week of January. So pretty interesting. And so I'll be really interested in hearing more inside what went on inside Arcade1up once he is free to talk about it. I think that's the only place we're going to get info, because Lord knows Arcade1up doesn't want to talk about it, which is very frustrating. And in this, I've reached out to several people at Arcade1up to see if they would talk from a business perspective. I don't, I know most of you probably have no idea my background, but I've held multiple executive positions throughout my career. I currently am sitting in one. I, owned a company for quite a while. It was a regional internet provider. I was the president and CEO there. We had, ended up selling that before I went to the current role that current organization I'm with now. But, so I've been in these positions. I've had to make these kinds of decisions before, and it's really frustrating that I don't know. It's just really frustrating to me how they're handling some of this stuff, and so I just wanted to give them an opportunity to, hey, let's talk completely from a business perspective. And I know you can't share, IP, your intellectual property and things like that, but we can talk about some of the overall public strategies of your company, how you view your customer bases, things like that, what your target market is. Just keep it high level, like CNBC type stuff. But they're a stone wall. So I don't get it. I hope they, if you're in a leadership role in that company, you should be getting out and leading. You should be the face of your company. Even if you guys are just interim and you're co-CEOs, dear Lord, like, you've got to start talking to people and getting news out there. We shouldn't be getting news about your company from your partners. It really should be you leading the way. And Zero Redux put out there, Travis MCP is kind of off the grid. Yeah, I know he showed up on Danny's stream, and I kind of roasted him a little bit because he jumped on to try to provide some, I don't know, to kind of do some blocking and tackling for Arcade1up after people were kind of riled up about not being at CES. And, to be quite frank, he was kind of grasping at straws, and one of them was he basically blamed everybody, like, because people weren't happy with Cyrus's sale production videos that's why they weren't going to CES. And like seriously, that's not the case. I mean, that was a bit ridiculous. They're not going to just go because of that. I mean, they can be honest. You know, maybe it's a combination of money and the fact that they don't have anything new to announce. If they're not going to release any new products in the first half or first quarter, why would they go? Because they got nothing to say. That to me is the only reason they wouldn't go. I don't buy the money thing. They could have done exactly what they did last year and get a hotel suite, which it's Vegas. They're not that expensive, and shown off new versions of their the deluxe cabs that they're going to have coming out this year. That's also why I don't think they're going to release new versions personally. I think the ones that were released last year are going to continue to be their products in the market this year. Now, I do think we'll get new cabs. I think we're going to get several new ones, you know, several being 2 or 3. And hopefully at least one of those is an XL, you know, maybe an XL. I know everybody's talking MK2, but it wouldn't surprise me if Costco, because that really looks like Costco is going to be the only outlet for those, because they flat out said only at least Michael B, I think, said this, that only the big box stores will be their outlets for XL cabs over the next year. And so, you know, Sam's Club hasn't carried Arcade1up products for about a year that I've seen. I think they have some on their website, but they don't keep any in store anymore. And so I would imagine you're looking at Costco. I've heard Costco is happy with what their last deal. They sold through them all. Yeah, they discounted some near the end, but most stores sold out of them without any discounting. So I think the easiest thing for Arcade1up to do is just throw Miss Pac-Man on there and sell a Miss Pac-Man XL. But if they do an MK, I mean, that's a must buy for me. I'll get that. And hopefully, you know, Zach's here. Zach mentions, hey, hopefully it'll have the playability for MK lobbies and so on. I mean, that is something Travis hinted that we were going to get, 2 or 3 months ago, and haven't really heard anything about since. So hopefully it does. You know, it would be great to have Spectate and MK. You know, it is what it is. I mean, I like the XLs. I do have an XL Pac-Man. It's the only one I have. I wish they would release a Golden Tee that was maybe a newer version of the game that had a good monitor. I'd pick that up. I would also pick up an XL NFL Blitz, which I know most people probably don't want, but Blitz is still my favorite Arcade1up cabinet. I think it's so fun to play. I have that up in my office in my break room, and lots of people play that. It's by far my most played cab, not just by me, but by randoms that come in through our office. They all stop and play that. They also play Street Fighter 2 a lot too, but so I liked Blitz. It didn't have late hits, but that to me was never a big deal, but it plays well. So let's see. Where's KFB? I don't know. I know he's been throwing, you know how he does. He on again, off again, you know, gets riled up, and I know he's had some of that. I saw some people, I did want to kind of address this, completely unrelated to Arcade1up or anything. There's been a lot of people making claims, and that's KFB reminded that their comments are getting deleted on various people's streams. I think I had somebody who asked if I had deleted their comment in a prior video, which I won't do. I'm not a big fan of deleting comments unless it's spam or an illegal thing. Like, you're not going to post hate speech or crap like that, call for violence. I will delete. For that, you could call me whatever name you want to call me. I'm not going to delete you. I don't care if you disagree with anything I say. That's totally good with me. But I've heard multiple people say this, and so I don't know if people are aware, but earlier, I think it's been just a few days, midway through last week, YouTube made an announcement that they were adjusting their algorithm on content moderation in light of the 2024 presidential election. And so essentially what they've been doing is throwing out strikes per se to commenters. So their algorithm now is auto deleting any comment that they deem borderline misinformation, hate speech, whatever. So I don't know what's in some of their comments. I mean, you may have seen KFB's, tirade over the last week. My guess is nobody's actively actually going in there and deleting his stuff. Maybe they are. He's said some pretty crazy things from time to time. But in all likelihood, I think why people are seeing comments disappear of theirs is that this algorithm is picking them up and just auto deleting them. They're happening in them live streams, they're happening in chat, and it's not just the handful of people in this community. I've seen it widespread. There are a few channels covering it because of how widespread it's gotten. So just be aware if you see comments disappear that you're making on somebody's channel, either through chats or live chat or in their comment section, that's likely what's happening. So try to take that with a grain of salt. It's the YouTube censorship again. So, and so Doug Dog's talking, the MK patch was pretty much done. They were QAing it. So hopefully that's true and their QAing is going well and we will have that. They're probably, my guess, if it is done, they're probably holding that for an MK XL announcement so they can drop them all around the same time and get people fired up for it. Still hopes it's coming soon. And then Zach's Ride says, if they do an MK XL, my deluxe is gone and I'll pay retail for MK XL. It's the same quality as my Pac-Man XL and MK Deluxe. I totally agree. I didn't hesitate paying retail for the Pac-Man XL. It's awesome. Totally worth the price. Most of my cabs, I've only played retail for 2 of them, I think. I paid retail for Star Wars and MVC2. Almost all of the rest of them I've gotten for $200 or $300, whether that's used or in some blowout that Arcade1up was doing. I take that back. I got that Street Fighter 2 HS5. I got that one for $100 off when it launched on Prime. So it wasn't dirt cheap, but I didn't pay retail for it either. But even my At Games Legends pinball, I got that from Sam's Club last year when they were blowing out all the At Games stuff. I had that for like under $200 because I did a price what do they call it, a price comparison or price match, and the people beat it by 10%, so it dropped it down to like $192 with tax, which was awesome. And so that's why I didn't hesitate, and I'm going to keep it when I get my 4K. I didn't hesitate with the 4K because I got the other one so dirt cheap. I was like, whatever, I'll buy the 4K pinball at the pre-order price because between the 2 of them, it's fairly decent rate. And KFB equals Cartman. As crazy as this sounds, the move would be to make Countercade a temp spokes chaff for the YouTubers, then release one new cab and a major update like MK Spectate. Egg haters, silence the doomers. Yeah, I mean, that assumes a lot that Arcade1up has a good strategy behind them. I've yet to see that. They make products that we love. That's about the most positive thing I can say about them. It takes them a while to learn to do it right, and maybe that's because they're milking the sales, knowing that they can make a tweak every year and we'll just buy the new version. But I think over the last 2 years, they've learned the bulk of at least this community isn't going to do that. The one of the other things I think, we tend to say, hey, we're not their customer. It's the retailers, and that the retailers only want Pac-Man, and I gave a lot of credence to that until I posted that Nebraska Furniture Mart video. So I don't know if you guys watched that. I post that because of a conversation with Jason Little Alien and Cornercade on one of his streams, because I thought it was cool and I thought it would be worth seeing. And apparently so did a lot of other people, right? I'm a baby YouTuber. I think at the time I had like 150 subscribers. That video for me with 150 subscribers did 10,000 plus views in just over 2 days. And, got me 70 more subscribers since then. And so what that says to me, looking at a lot of the content, right? I started looking at what are some of the other top videos from some of the other Arcade1up YouTubers. And what seems to be interesting is a lot, like I noticed P-Dubs, right? If he's still around, he has a 50,000 view video that is the greatest Arcade1up setup he's ever seen, right? And as you look at some of these big popular videos from people in this space, they are these home arcade tour things, right? And it's amazing how many people are latching onto that. I mean, everybody knows, and I don't remember his actual like YouTube name, but everybody knows the guy with the game room and the home arcade. He's one that got Blitz early. He's on Instagram 100 million times a day. It seems like he's the guy that has like the Jumbotron and has a couple home theater pieces and a bunch of Arcade1ups. His room is awesome. I don't know that I've ever really heard him talk. It's always pictures of his room, and they're super popular. And so it shows that there is a very large base of people out there that are really interested in having a home arcade in their home. And if I were Arcade1up, I would be looking at those Pac-Mans and MK and Street Fighter, that, these same 5 that they release every year. Those are their loss leaders, in my opinion. Yeah, they make money on them, but those are the ones they know that they can hook people on nostalgia to grab. I think once people have one of these, they end up with 5, 6. I mean, after I got my first one, I'd looked at them for a few years and just never pulled the trigger. And then finally I just said, whatever, I'm going to buy one of these and throw it in my break room at my office. And as soon as I bought one, within 6 months, I had bought 13 of the damn things. And I think many people have the same story, right? They buy one and suddenly like, these are awesome. And then they end up with like 5, 6, 7 of these things over the span of a year or two. And I don't think that's unique. I think lots of people are doing that. And I think once they make that first sale with somebody, they'll jump into a lot of these other cabs. And so for Arcade1up to be like, we're only going to focus on these like 5 titles over and over and over, seems very short-sighted to me. I think it's an easy transition from those 5 into the more obscure titles. And yeah, they're not going to sell, 10,000 Ridge Racers, but they could sell 5,000 of them, right? And it's just how they market them and how they put them out there. I think they need to take bolder swings, but not buy as many. I think they can easily facilitate those. I also heard that I think somebody said Arcade1up isn't going to do drop ship anymore, and yada yada yada, because this, that, and the other failed. I think they over ordered some of those things they said failed, like, they way over ordered Dragon's Lair. They're only just now, I'm hearing they're down to 20-ish of the Tron cabs. I think they can be doing drop ship. And in fact, if you look at what Kokum offers, they actually offer direct shipment to consumers, and they're probably doing that with Arcade1up, or could be. And maybe they put a freeze on it because they had $57 million of Arcade1up inventory. And now that it's greatly reduced, maybe they're going to be able to do that again this year, and that might give us a opportunity for something like, what is it that, Smash TV or something truly new that they can do in limited quantity. I don't know. I'm just ideating, really, hoping that Arcade1 actually gives us something and doesn't become the Infinity Game Company. But we have no news from them and no information, so all we can do is guess and speculate, right? So Zero Redux says, think about how hard it is to put out a product and a few years later have a diehard community watching every move. Yeah, it is. I can get that. But I would say, how many companies have a diehard community after a few years of putting a product out there? I think that speaks to how popular their products are and how much opportunity there is in the community. And I think their missteps highlight that. I mean, look at, I started off the stream talking about Polymega. That company was before Arcade1up, and they were just a complete shit show and still are. But thanks to Atari, they're actually finally starting to deliver these products and can go from this vaporware company to a real competitor in the space, finally. And so I think it's interesting that how some of these things go. Arcade1up started on fire and built up a massive, enthusiastic following, and they got too locked into their own hype. And, they say with growth of a company, two things can happen, right? You're either not prepared for the growth and you can't meet demand, aka Polymega, or two, you grow too fast and you can't meet the expectation of consumers, which is what Arcade1up is. I would rather have the too fast of growth than the vaporware that was Polymega, but I think it all speaks to the leadership in the company, and it was a startup. It's a lot of people. Scott's had been in lots of different businesses, but a lot of the people at Arcade1up pretty green. If you look at their backgrounds and their history, they don't have a lot of professional experience before joining that company, and so they relied heavily on John D's experience, and he was the guy everybody loved to hate because for all the good he did, he had several missteps, right? And so he was willing to be out there in public and be the punching bag. And now it doesn't seem like anybody is. Cyrus, God love him, gets out there in front of jumps into these streams and is willing to be the face. But man, does he need to be? Should he be? If he's focusing on licensing, should he be their on-camera talent? It just seems, again, speaks to weird leadership going on there that, they got 100 different marketing people, it seems like, working for them from, you look on LinkedIn, and yet the licensing guy is the one who's on camera. I don't, and talking to people. It just doesn't make sense. He should be spending all his time with companies and these licensees and, building those relationships, not building relationships in the community and but whatever. In the right retail setting, they will sell better to non-community buyers. I agree with that, because I think some of those, I think the retail setting that's the lead in, right? That's how you get people. I have no doubt Arcade1up makes more money if they sell somebody a cab directly than if somebody buys it through a retailer, right? Because Arcade1up is selling those cabs to Kokum. Kokum is turning around and selling those cabs to Walmart and Home Depot and everybody else. And so, sure, that's where they get volume. So Arcade1up loves the volume. But on a per cab basis, if they can cut out one middleman and they get a bigger slice of the pie by selling it direct and just drop shipping it out of Kokum, that gives them more money to work with on those more obscure titles. And it's just like in the retail business, right? When you take a Target, almost every product in Target, they don't make any money on, or they make very little money on. What they want is you to come in there and buy clothes. Because if you buy clothes, it costs them 25 cents for a shirt that you're going to pay $20 for. And so the clothing department pays for that entire store. And so they're willing to sell things at 1% margin in order to get you there, so that you'll, on the off chance you'll buy a t-shirt or a pair of jeans or some shoes, because that's where all the money is. And it should be the same thing with Arcade1up. Get these things in the retailers and get them down to that $200 or $300, the $300 price range, $400 max. Get them to what you can get it to get it to that price. Put them in retail, sell them there, then move people from there. Oh, look, you just bought this cab. Check out what else we have directly on our website, where you can get all these other games too. They don't need to ship all those other games and convince retailers to buy all those other games. They keep the retailers on the big known titles, and then the smaller titles they sell direct and use Kokum to drop ship them. Just to me, it seems like a fairly simple model, and it's one that's workable, and they wouldn't be cannibalizing their own customers like what they do now by trying to blow these things out at dirt cheap prices, which destabilizes their market. I mean, who's going to go buy a full price cab of one of these deluxes now, when you can just wait until October or November next year and get them for $200 or $300 off? They just seem to be tripping all over themselves with what they're doing right now. But let's see. Says, I hope the next release isn't a wet fart. Don't we all? Games Plus says, slowly but surely I'm replacing all my cans with risers with Deluxe or XL. Me too. I really like the Deluxe. I have the MK Legacy, so I probably won't buy the MK Deluxe, but you better believe the second they do an MK XL, I'm on it, and then I'll get rid of the other one. Says, I think Danny would be better. And yeah, I think, you can't, Danny's positivity is pretty great, and he is just really obsessed with Arcade1up, and it's awesome. And for a company like that, he would be a good spokesman for him, or at least a big cheerleader for him. But, you've heard some of the comments he made. He might be a bit naive into what kind of pull he thinks he would have if he hosted their show. That's not likely to happen, but he's definitely would be a big cheerleader for him. And it, his what's the word I'm looking for? His enthusiasm, I guess, is contagious. Like, people, he gets people fired up because he's so fired up. And if he can maintain that and host a show with them, I think, especially if they used him on announcements and stuff, he would be so super excited, and it would have viewers super, super excited. Probably be good doing their Instagram content too, if they worked him into it. Yep. Agrees, Zach's right. Danny does have the heart for it. Zero Redux says, the Cyrus is watching. There's still the crowdfunding experiment that John D proposed last year and never initiated. Last resort with Kokum direct shipping. I totally agree, Zero Redux. I think doing the Kickstarter, crowdfunding, Has Labs, whatever you want to call it, all these rare titles, put a target out there that says, I know they did what they do 500 with the KI Pro, but they ordered the KI Pros first. Don't do that. Give us a design for a cab, put it out there, say, in order for this thing to make, in order for us to produce this cab, we have the licensing, it's approved. For us to make it, we got to sell 1,000 of these, or we got to sell 500 or 750. Wait till you get 500, then order it. If you don't get 500, don't make it. I mean, that seems to be a super easy way to shut up the critics in this community, right? You can put these titles out there and say, here it is. Now put up or shut up. And, you know, people still find something to complain about, but man, that seems to be the easiest way to satisfy a large swath of this market and put a bunch of variety out there. I mean, it certainly works for the smaller players in the space, the guys doing like Numbskull and New Wave Toys. I mean, their price point is considerably lower, but it works. I mean, Arcade1up has this down to a science. They've managed to get these deluxes in all the same size box, and it's not very big. So the shipping size, yeah, it's got a little weight to it, but the shipping space, the floor space that these boxes take are pretty small for what they are. So it's very doable. And Thumper says he has a likable way about him. He's passionate, talking about the Countercade. Couldn't agree more. Thumper Squid says, I've got a lot about live by just asking or doing. Oh, I've got by a lot in life by just asking or doing. Yeah, it's the adage thing, you know, just do it, and it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? Naive yet, but still a good spokesman, catchphrase, let's go. Oh, 100%. He loves the company. He loves their products, and he is super fired up about it. Boy, you know how crazy over the top Danny would get if they sent him a cab to test and review? He would be over the moon. Like, I can already imagine what how super excited, enthusiastic he would be with that opportunity. You know, he would just be, like I said, he would be way over the top. Kickstarters for passion titles people would be great. 100% agree. Would also give the community a way to have a say in their business at lower risk to Arcade1up. Also agree. And I think it doesn't take a huge amount of investment to make that happen, right? They could hire one person who that's its function and says, here's all the things we have licensed, you know, work with our team to mock up a design. Hell, we already know they have designs for things like Double Dragon and Sonic, if they could still get that license, and Tapper with a fridge. I mean, we already know they've built tons of these mock-ups, Aliens versus Predator, whatever. Get a design, get it approved, and then roll out a crowd fund. Get it going. Okay. PD7 would so sad I'm as is good spokesman for A1up. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about PD7, the thing I like about him is how excited and fired up he gets for a sale. Whether it's Arcade1up or t-shirts or whatever, he loves him some Kohl's Cash, and it is interesting. I think that's really cool, and why I like watching his channel is he loves the deals, man. He is the deal guy. He gets so excited for a discount and a deal. So honestly, between the two of them, if they had PD7 doing their sales like like Cyrus was trying to do, have PD7 make those videos for you instead, and then have Danny doing their new announcements stuff. I think they'd have a completely different. The community would be completely different about them. Of course, everybody's gonna, you know, like, again, there's haters for everybody, but it's what it is. Going to be a crazy year. Interesting to see how the YouTubers navigate the year of Cyrus. Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't think it's going to be much different than last year. I like I said, I think, again, just opinions, I don't think we're going to see new versions of the main staples of the cabs. I think what's out there is going to sit in the market for at least a year before they announce a new one. Hopefully we'll get, like I said, the XLs and a couple new titles, and that will be where Cyrus has a chance to shine. I think he's been pretty absent. I haven't seen him on anybody's stream since he really got kind of blown up by people for those sales videos, which is a shame. But he's been, like I said, he's been out there hawking in the game table. PD7 would also make a good spokesman for 1UP. Funny enough, Danny's build of the Atari 50th ended up backfiring. It showed everyone how janky it is. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I mean, they still got to make good product, right? I mentioned that earlier today. I have one of those. It was my only Atari cab. I bought it mainly because it had the 2600 games built into it. Figuring they do a legacy I'd rather have this year. But it wouldn't have those 50 2600 games in it, so I said, what the hell? I don't mind the Atari 50th logo, but man, I just don't like playing it. It doesn't, it's decent quality. Even though it seems like it's the same size as all the other Arcade1ups I have over there, it feels smaller for some reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. It just feels incredibly smaller to the ones around it, and it's really about the same height. I did not enjoy it. I think I turned it on 3 times maybe to play something. It's just not, it's not what I wanted, I guess. It was the only cab I've ever been disappointed in buying. Love PD7. His walk and talks is superb. They are. Bill is a great guy too. Haha, love his sales videos. I'm really enjoying Bad Boy Mike. Yep, he's great too. Batman is a legend. MKXL for president 2024. Yeah. What is that? Anybody else for president this year? Were you disappointed with Atari 50 and Katie Cornercade? 2600 games are sit on the couch console type. I couldn't agree more. I also bought the Atari 2600 Plus. That's really where I'll play those games. But I did think, hey, maybe somebody comes over, is playing in the arcade, and just wants to flip onto those games. They can do that. I've got a couple real little kids, and those are fairly easy to play without having to drag out all the console and all the controllers, because the one disappointing thing with the 2600 Plus is they didn't bother to make the controllers wireless, which is a huge miss. I'm sure there's some aftermarket one that might work that you could plug in there. But man, you're going to make a modern 2600 that plays the old games. Put some damn wireless controllers in the thing. Might not bode well for Atari buyout theory. Yeah, I don't know. I think they move a lot of them. They do sell a lot of these things, and of course, Atari's selling them on their website themselves. I don't think Atari would quote unquote buy Arcade1up out. They didn't really buy out Polymega or Antstream either. What they did is make a company saving investment, right? With Play Magi, the people who make Polymega, they kicked in 4.6 million euros, and I think it was very similar with what they did to Antstream. In exchange for that, they got 49% of the company, so not a controlling interest. They have the majority of stock that's available in the market, but they don't have a controlling interest in all the stock. But it positions them that they, Play Magi needs more money. They're going to go back to them, and then Atari will own that company. In exchange, Play Magi has to put their software on the VCS so that you can play all your backed up retro games on the VCS, which is for Atari, that seems to be their MO, right? They're trying to drive people to the VCS. So you can get with the Antstream, if you're a big fan of Antstream, the Atari, you can play it on the Atari VCS. You can get all those arcade games that Antstream has on the VCS. And so it makes sense. We've all heard the rumors last year that Arcade1up patented a software delivery system for arcade games. So some sort of app, whatever that looks like. And if they're sitting on all these titles, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. Even if it's on your PC, right? If they're making digital money off of, or if they're making money off digital sales on the Infinity game table, well, it makes a lot of sense to come out with some sort of arcade service if they have all these licenses that says, hey, you can just download them and install them on your PC, or in the case of Atari, on the VCS, right? So if Atari goes in and if, again, having no proof Arcade1up actually was unable to meet their debt obligation, we've just heard that as a rumor, but if that is true, we know they restructured it once already, because that was public, that Atari could come in and make that same similar investment, get yet another cab, which they already have through that deal with Atari 50th, which I'm betting Cyrus was behind, based on his resume, right? But if that software ever comes out, they could be we want it on the VCS, and in exchange, here's $4 or $5 million, and let's roll. We'll see. I don't think they would buy Arcade1up. I don't think they want to be in the business of producing arcade games for people, but I do think they're in the business of selling Atari VCSs and getting people into that ecosystem. That was an ecosystem everybody thought was dead, but keeps on going, and they keep on pushing out. And so I think that's our Atari's overall strategy, and it would make sense that they go make a stake in a company they already have a tight relationship with, like Arcade1up. What's your latest, newest one-up you picked up? Fast and Furious. I bought Fast and Furious when it was way discounted over the holidays. Before that, I bought the Pac-Man XL and the HS5. I think those are the only deluxes or XLs I have. Those are the ones I bought this year. So I just want to see a few 2024 leaked titles come to fruition. The Smash TV, Street Fighter Alpha. Street Fighter Alpha would be nice. They have to release something new this year to keep the interest up. They would probably be deluxe. Yeah, I think everything from here on out is going to be deluxe, other than those peasant cades. It's certainly possible by the time Evo rolls around, it would make sense to at least announce a Street Fighter Alpha. The question is, can their chipset run that one? I would think so, because Alpha is not that much different than everything else. But yeah, I mean, because then they don't even actually have to sell it till Q3, and by that time, I think Street Fighter 2 is going to be long in the tooth. The HS5 version, anyway. And so they'll be because they can use the same exact design of the cab, right? And just throw the new stuff on it and throw the one extra game in there, and you're good to go. But that goes back to, do they have the money to develop new software, right? They've had different bundles in the past, but we heard from Cyrus directly the reason these versions of Deluxe all have the exact same game build is because they wanted the online community to grow. And I don't know why they wouldn't be able to connect those same games cross platform, but they don't see, from the sound of it, it doesn't seem like they think they can. So you get this same game build so that they can all play together without developing something new. And it doesn't sound like Arcade1up wants to make that investment. So it's an easy to go from what they have today in Deluxe to an XL, because you don't need a new PCB and you don't need a new game lineup. It's just some more wood, right? So that's an easy leap to go from Deluxe to XL. It's probably a lot bigger and more expensive development cost to go from an HS5 Deluxe with Street Fighter Championship Edition to a Street Fighter Alpha, because now you have a different game, so you need to rebuild the game lineup, and so there's some development cost in that they might want to avoid, especially if they want to make them interplay with other versions of Street Fighter on the existing ones that are out there. It's the reason the Shinko Hadouken and all that have the exact same PCB in them. Honestly, I'm interested in the ALU 4K, fast enough for all the 90s games. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the one benefit. I don't think, honestly, the ALU 4K is one I'm on the fence about. I'm not a big fan of these 16:9 arcades to play retro games, even if they put on the simulated bezels on the side. I'd rather just they put a Unico screen in there and you get true 4x3. But to your point, right, with all the hardware upgrade they did, I would rather not see 4K and just see better titles with the better hardware, because there's no real reason to have 4K other than the OTG stuff. All these arcade games we play, even the ones in the 90s and stuff, they are not 4K. So you're just upscaling, and when you upscale a 32, 8-bit, 16-bit, 64-bit, whatever, it's just upscaled. It's going to look the same. And so there's not a lot of value in going all the way up there. And even if you use, I know Michael B mentioned they're using the upscaling in the monitors or whatever. That's less than quality, right? If you're going to do a true upscale or a remaster of these titles, you have to go back to the original textures. The polygons can upscale fine. That's not a big deal. But the textures have to be upscaled from source in order for them to look good, or they just look choppy and weird. And yes, some TVs and screens have better upscaling technology in them than others. But let's face it, they're not putting a RetroTink 4K in there that's going to have good upscaling. They're putting in screens that are dirt cheap and that have the jankiest upscaling software in them. And I'm sure they'll look fine, but they're not going to be like knock your socks off. I mean, these games aren't that resolution. We don't need to screen that resolution for them. But that's my opinion. The 4K pinball is different because those aren't retro games. Those are modern games simulating virtual. And when you have that all rendered in 4K with the 4K textures, it's going to look more realistic. When you're talking, playing Pac-Man on your, 4KU, there's no point in having 4K. I'm happy with my games list. Upgraded versions of my current lineup would be good for me. MK XL, Centipede Deluxe, Street Fighter XL, Dig Dug Deluxe. Couldn't agree more. Still love a Q*bert. I don't understand why Arcade1up thinks that's not a popular cap. I mean, even that movie Pixels, that Adam Sandler movie, like one of the key characters in there was Q*bert because everybody recognizes Q*bert. Why is Tastemakers being so quiet? Last year in January, we knew what their initial release info spring were going to be, which were the Deluxe, Class of 1981, MK2, Pac-Man, Fast and the Furious. No idea, Rob. I think, kind of as we've talked earlier, that likely they're being quiet because they aren't planning on releasing anything in the first half of the year. Even their CES announcement last year, if you remember, I don't think we actually saw any of those release until middle of the year. But they had some new products to announce, right? They had the first time we'd seen deluxes, so they were excited to show the new form factors. And then they had the Casino-cade and that Infinity game board. And I think that's the products they're going to roll through the rest of the year with. I don't, 2024 with. I think we'll get some new if we get like Alien versus Predator, for example, if that survives and retailers actually wanted it. I don't think we're going to hear about that until the movie comes out, which is, I think it's slated for this summer is the big Alien movie. Rumors are it's like actually really good and it has high expectations. So if and I don't remember the production company off of it offhand, I think it was Fox, right? Is Alien, but which means Disney now. So Predator was on Universal, so I don't know, whatever. But it much like Fast and Furious, I think the Warner Brothers drove, or actually that might be Universal too, but whatever company did Fast and Furious, they drove the release of that title. I don't think Arcade1up did. I think that was hey, we have a license for it, and they were like, we want this to come out with the release of our movie just to hit all the different licensing. I mean, there's all last year, if you look at what they pushed out with that Fast and Furious lineup, you had Fast and Furious Legos, you had Fast and Furious different like Matchbox Hot Wheels stuff, you had these things. They went full bore with the release of that movie and releasing all kinds of parallel merchandise, and Arcade1up was just one of those. And I think you could see with the AVP, with the release of the Aliens movie, it makes perfect sense. I personally, the tie-in I think makes the most sense this year, personally, and if they miss it and they won't get another chance for 4 years. And I know they've tried to sell this title to retailers before and they didn't want it, but that's track and field. I know they could not get the original art. That the person who owns the license to the art is never going to let it go, so they'd have to do new art, which I don't. Is frustrating, but it's not that big a deal to me, especially when it's sandwiched in the other cabs. I mean, the rest of the cab design can be exactly the same. They just can't use the art print. They'd have to have a new art print. But we're coming up to the Summer Olympics. What better time to release track and field than alongside the Summer Olympics? And I think retailers would buy it for that because they could market the hell out of it during the Olympics. But that's just me. I want Star Wars XL. Me too. I don't know. I used to have an original Star Wars years ago, probably 20 plus years ago at this point. I've noticed the game is different barely in the Arcade1up version. And maybe I'm dreaming it. I don't know. Maybe if anybody else on here has experience with the real one. But in the real one, when you transition from shooting the TIE fighters and Darth Vader's TIE into the Death Star, there's a period where Darth Vader's TIE gets in front of you. And on the real arcade, you can hit it over and over and over and over, and you get like 20,000 points every time you hit it. Or not 22,000. And you can tag it over and over and over quite a few times before it goes out of reach. I've noticed on the Arcade1up, you can't do that. Like, it goes by so quick on that screen that you don't have time to just hammer on it. And that's definitely, at least in my brain, unless I'm hallucinating it, that was different. I played a hell of a lot of the original arcade having one, and I seem to remember that was distinctly that. And so I don't know if anybody else has noticed that. I just throw that out there because it's frustrated me with the Arcade1up version. What do you think of Fast and Furious? I bought it on sale too. I think it's fun. I am super disappointed they took one game and split it into two. It's very frustrating. I don't like that they don't have all the cars, especially the cars from the movie. I actually like the Fast and Furious movies quite a bit, even though they're completely ridiculous. I'm waiting for Fast and Furious 11, where they cross over with Transformers. And then Marvel superheroes, because you already have superheroes in Fast and Furious. If you've watched the spin-off movies, they've been into space. What's next but Transformers and other superheroes? So I'm frustrated it's missing the key cars from the film. I'm frustrated that they split the tracks across two separate games, and the draw distance is crappy. Like, I've noticed, like, some of the it doesn't happen all the time, but in some of the busier maps, sometimes you're way down the track and nothing is rendered around you, which is super frustrating. And other times you play it, it'll render just fine on that same track. But it's annoying, and I know they had to dumb the thing down and to get it to run on the Arcade1up's PCBs. But it's fun. I like it a hell of a lot more than Ridge Racer. I'll say that. I do think it's very fun to play. I also like, this is kind of silly, but I have a 2 and a 3, or a 3 and a 4-year-old now, and they love the driving games, and the Fast and Furious has that basically like catch up help me mode, so they can play and actually make progress. If they can't step on the pedal, it starts the pedal for you. I mean, so it has a lot of nice features for really little kids to play it. No, that's not why we buy an arcade game, but it's one that they can sit down and play. Just like Star Wars, my 3-year-old son loves to play Star Wars, and it just flies around shooting randomly, but it's something he can actually do and have fun playing. I think it's fun. Sometimes it glitches and the road and art. Yeah, I mean, same opinion. I think it's a very fun game to play, but the asset glitchiness is just frustrating as hell. Star Wars XL would be good. Had to sit down, but stand up is better. XL would be king. It absolutely would, especially if they mold those plastic pieces around the bezel. I know you can get some third party, but that stuff's iconic, so that you feel like you're actually in the cockpit. I love the molded plastic of the original. 1UP hasn't released the original Street Fighter II World Warrior on any of the newer Street Fighter cabs. Waiting on it. I agree. I think that was. Didn't they use the marquee on one of the like Shinko Hadouken or whatever, but they didn't actually release the side art or anything. I got a Fast and Furious last December. Is actually the Tokyo Drift engine and has Japanese in it. That it is. The interesting thing was, I think it was Michael B or somebody was talking about how we'll never see a pole position because of all the billboards and stuff that are in pole position, but then My Arcade just released a pole position, so there's still a possibility Arcade1up could give us a new driver this year that's pole position. That's one I would buy in a second. Pole position 1 and 2 on it. I don't really care if there's much of anything else. I think that would be awesome. That is from my childhood. That was the driving game that always stood out at the arcade. I mean, I was really little, but it's like etched in my memory, aside from like Super Sprint or Super Off-Road, which those are some of my favorite, but I was older at that stage. The World Warrior is on the Street Fighter II Partycade and the Legacy. I have the Partycade. Will Capcom Legacy board work with the Yoga Flame? I'm sure it would work. Yeah, I don't think Capcom Legacy has online play though. Rob Krasinski says, and I got the Deluxe Street Fighter 2 for Final Fight, even though I have a Big Blue. Big Blue is soft moddable, but it requires extra steps that we have to figure out yet. Yeah. And there's Console Fanboy. What's up? Yeah, let's go. You have like a 2-hour. I can't even imagine how long it took you to edit that video of Let's Go for like a solid 10 minutes. Like, I would lose my shit. Yeah. At Games Plus, noticed Console Fanboy is in the house. There's no online World Warrior yet. Old Coyotes R Us. The high jump in that game is impossible. Actually, I know love him or hate him, Rexer has a good breakdown on how to do the high jump in track and field on his channel. I think he put it up last year. Appears to be something of a savant in that game. But if you want a good tutorial on how to do all the events, he has a good one. Did I miss the MKXL discussion? Damn it. Only a little, nothing in depth. Just everybody saying how we all want one. Let's see. Everything that you hear about new releases in the future, just rumors until taste make. Couldn't agree more. That's That's how it is with anything. Everything's a rumor until you actually see it. Even with that, some of those leaks coming straight out of their retail proposals, until it's actually an announcement and you actually see one in production, it's all vaporware. I know exactly what you're talking about. Darth disappears. Yeah, it's so frustrating. You can on the ALU, but I have to play with the roller ball. Works okay. More let's go. Oh, there's OTG. More let's go. More let's go. Yeah, all you have to do to save Arcade1up is say let's go 700,000 times. And honestly, there's a lot of truth to this, Zohar. It's 90% of managing the community is just being positive, and you know, Arcade1up should get that. Now's your chance, ODG, to ask James to get him on your channel. I do throw an email in there, OTG, or I've been trying. You know, I know Console Kit's talked about doing something. I've been having a hell of a time reaching him on Facebook Messenger because he has it locked down. But I do have an email in my description for whoever, so be patient because I don't sit on that email by any means. I just check it maybe once a week. Why are the peasant cabs $2.99 but the ones with risers are $4.99? Is the riser with the art really supposed to be worth $200 more? I think it's the riser. I think is $60, right? That's the that's the going retail price of a riser. I think it's a combination of a slightly bigger box, which drives up shipping and shelf space cost, and retail dollar per square inch is a big deal. And so if a box is bigger and takes up more space, it retail stores look at it differently. The other thing is the non-peasant versions have the light up marquees, or now the more advanced slide in marquees and stuff, which those junk, I don't want to call them junk, but the peasant cabs don't have. They're bare bones. You know, I don't think they have coin doors either, if I remember right. Pole position must be up next if it can never be done. Yeah, and clearly if my arcade doing it, anybody can do it. KFB, you missed Jason. Did I mention let's go? Been clipping it for months, dude. I plan way ahead. I have no doubt. But yeah, man, it's a lot of clipping. A lot of clipping. Leave it alone. James, Cornercade said he reached out to you and hasn't heard anything back. I'll check. I might have missed his email, so I'll jump in and take a look. Loving your streams and content. Appreciate that, C-Mart. Please go on. I'd be happy to. I think what Danny does is fun. So go on tomorrow. Ha 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 ha. Okay, we'll tell Danny to reach out through email. Alrighty, so I appreciate everybody showing up. A lot more chats here, so let's see. Just go outside and yell, let's go. Danny should show up. He might hear me. Isn't he up in Chicago? You know, with the cold weather, doesn't noise travel farther? Maybe it'll reach it up there. I'll skip that other one. And the Danny signal. I can just imagine what that would look like. All right, I'm gonna wrap up. I've been on now for quite a while. I do appreciate everybody joining, and I'm looking over at my screen instead of the camera like a doofus, but that's why I'm a baby YouTuber and not a professional. So again, thanks everybody for joining and coming, hanging out and chit-chatting. Really appreciate it. And so until next time, have fun.